but at the time they explained what they saw to journalist Ola Olsen.
Katja
and Purio were returning home after seeing a film at Kungsgatan. They had to pass this place here. Katja asked Purio for the time, but she had forgotten her watch. So Katja approached a man in the street and asked the time. As it turned out, she recognized him. He was Finnish and he worked for a fitness center in Upplands Vasby. She asked him in Finnish if it was very late. He gave her a shocked look and didn't reply. Angrily, she took him by the arm and asked him why he refused to give her the time. The man stood there, his arms crossed, and at the moment she heard a noise. He drew his arms away, and she saw that he had a walkie-talkie in one hand. More shocking, she glimpsed that he had a pistol holstered under the other arm. From the walkie-talkie came a voice. "They're coming." The man replied in Finnish, "I've been spotted. What shall I do?" And a voice replied, "Hard luck. Continue as planned." The two girls were astonished. They didn't understand what was going on and headed off.
Who was the man with a Finnish accent who'd spoken into the walkie-talkie? Katja and Pirjo were just 2 blocks further on when they heard the gunshots. They looked back but saw nothing. Frightened, they ran to the nearest metro station. They returned home to the Upplands Vasby district, and the following morning they heard on the radio what had happened to the Prime Minister. In this same suburb, there's a fitness training centre called the Vasby Atlet Club. It's a place where many Finnish people come to spend time together.
It's here that they first encountered the man who they'd run into in front of the Dekorama store just before the murder. It was his behavior at the club that had marked him out in their minds. He joked with other Finns, and he made remarks about those who were training, but he never trained himself.
Katja still remembers the racist remarks which he was in the habit of making, but she cannot or will not give his name. But he was well known at the sports club.
Many people trained here, and Katja insists that everyone knew the name of the character in question. But the police insist that it has been impossible to identify and find him. I think that's a lie. They have their reasons for not tracing him. Well, at least up till now.
For years, Hans Olvebro has been in charge of the murder inquiry. 9 years. From the beginning, his position was the following. We had to find out the motives for the killing. The only line of inquiry which I refuse to follow is that which leads to the police force.
At the time, we conducted our inquiries completely objectively, and we have made enough progress to be able to assure you that there was no conspiracy. If you talk about the police inquiries, well, there's always a public aversion to what the police do. All the accusations have no substance. They have nothing to do with the reality.
If that's the case, how can the strange behavior of the patrolling police be explained, and the falsification of police documents?
My job is not to make inquiries about the police force. It is to arrest the killer of Olof Palme.
But has no inquiry ever linked the assassination to the police force?
Sweden is a great democracy, and so we have a democratic and efficient police force. Half the police officers are social democrats. Do you really believe us capable as Democrats of killing our own Prime Minister? We are there to protect our citizens.
One of the main members of the investigation team is also a member of the shooting club. Hans Holmer is a social democrat who seems to get on very well with the right-wing extremists. On the night of the murder, Hans Holmer says he was here in the town of Borlänge, which is about 200 kilometers from Stockholm, staying in this hotel. But is it true? In 1990, the hotel receptionist received an order: don't talk to people who ask questions about this. The journalist Sven Anna, who's written 5 books on the death of Palme, spoke to her before she received the order not to talk.
I came here in the autumn of 1987 and made inquiries in all the hotels. Hans Holmer didn't spend the night in any of them. In the spring of 1987, the receptionist May London, who works in this hotel, confirmed to me that he wasn't on the hotel register. I've checked the registers of all the hotels for this day, and Hans Holmer doesn't appear anywhere.
So nobody saw Holmer in the town, but this was his alibi. Holmer has recounted how he got up at 7:35 in the morning, went down to reception and asked for hot water to make some tea. He says it was the receptionist who informed him of the assassination the night before. Carl Nordlang works with a local printing firm. Out of personal interest, he's made his own investigation.
The duty receptionist on that night was Reidun Andreasson. She confirmed she never saw Hans Holmer.
The story of Holmer's search for hot water doesn't ring true either.
Anyone can ask for hot water at the reception desk until 7 in the morning. After that, when Holmer says he asked for the water, the breakfast room is already open and the reception desk doesn't give hot water anymore.
Later, Hans Holmer made available to inquirers the documents which were supposed to prove he had passed the night at Borlänge. But can they be believed? The name of the town doesn't appear on any of his bills. You can pick up identical bills from any hotel belonging to the Scandic Hotel Group. In the case of Hans Holmer, the credit card chit carries the initials of a receptionist who wasn't even on duty at the time. Another point about the hotel bill. Instead of the date March the 1st, when he supposedly paid, the bill is dated the day before, the 28th of February, the day of the murder. The question remains, where was Hans Holmer at the time of the assassination? He was apparently seen at police headquarters at the time he claimed to be in Borlänge. And later that night, not far from the murder scene, a high-ranking policeman testified that he passed Holmer and was astonished when Holmer didn't return his greeting. In addition, there's the word of Holmer's driver. Rolf Dahlgren was a trainer of elite parachute commandos before becoming a chauffeur for important politicians and high-ranking members of the Secret Service, the SAPO. Rolf Dahlgren died in May 1994, but his companion Lilian Folt was also a member of the police force.
Här är han, I Skellefteå.
She remembers only too well what he said about the night of the Prime Minister's murder.
During a visit to Rolf, Ulla Ankerspong, a lawyer from Gothenburg, and I asked a lot of questions about the murder of Palme. Rolf told us that he and Holmer arrived at the crime scene 7 minutes after the shooting.
Police Chief Soderstrom confirms that Holmer was in a patrol car which passed the murder spot 7 minutes after the crime took place.
I telephoned Rolf Dahlgren to verify the statement made by the woman Lilian Folt about the arrival time of the police car, and he confirmed it.
This is the record of the working hours of Rolf Dahlgren. Details concerning the night of the murder have been removed. Even the word Friday has been scratched out, as though this day had never existed. Since the very beginning, Hans Holmer concentrated his inquiry on a so-called Kurdish plot. Although there were no leads or any worthwhile information in this direction, he carried out a series of arrests and interrogations. He never bothered to ask for authority from a judge. He signed all the arrest documents himself.
The rise of Hans Holmér in the police force had depended on his connections with the Social Democrat Party. It would have been impossible without the heavy political backup of the party leaders.
The relationship between the leaders of the Social Democrats and the security forces was always rather special. After the death of Palme, the new government leader Ingvar Carlsson also backed Holmér, at least at the very beginning. But when Holmér realized that his theory about a Kurdish plot wasn't holding any water, he was forced to resign. Since then, the idea of a crazed lone killer has become the official line. Any question of police involvement remains completely taboo. So why should anybody be afraid of an exhaustive inquiry into the behavior of the security forces? It seems that there is a general fear that the naming of the real culprits of the murder of Olof Palme could overturn the very foundations of Swedish society. Even the media haven't taken it upon themselves to delve further, with a singular exception, a TV program fronted by Lars Borgnias. He inquired exhaustively into the death of Palme. So why has the evident line of inquiry towards police involvement been so taboo?
That's a difficult question. Traditionally, media reports which concern crimes are made hand in hand with the police. We show what the police are doing, but we never criticize the police.
So the press never explored the trail which might have led them to the police. Politicians, too, never probed too deeply. Only one isolated voice, that of the former Minister of Finance, Kjell-Olof Feldt, was raised in the midst of a troubling silence. Disconcerted, in August 1995, he said that a possible police role in the killing should be taken seriously. There was no official reaction, but the events which followed were strange. The night after he intervened, 2 men were spotted on the roof of the home of the new Prime Minister, Ingvar Carlsson, directly above his bedroom. Is it coincidence that a new sport was launched that very night, mountaineering up the facades of people's houses? The man behind it was a member of the shooting club, a member of the police squad known as the Baseball League, and he was also a member of the Uplands Vosby Fitness Club. The Secret Service, the SAPO, had been responsible for the safety of prime ministers since the death of Olof Palme. But the 2 men on the roof of the Premier's home were only spotted, and the police alerted, thanks to the vigilance of a guard from a private security company who was working nearby. The 2 men were arrested, but there was no formal inquiry. The police totally rejected any implication that there could be a political motivation. But where were the SAPO officers who were supposed to be protecting Carlsson? Only 6 hours after the incident, during a hastily called press conference, the new Prime Minister surprised the entire nation by announcing his resignation. He said it was for personal reasons. First had come the demand for a full and proper inquiry into the Palme murder from the former Minister of Finance. Then 2 men were on Carlsson's roof, and then came his surprise resignation, all in the space of several hours. No one has made the connection between these events. Carlsson never even took the time to nominate his successor. His deputy, Mona Sahlin, wasn't informed of his intention to resign until just before the press conference. In 1996, Ingvar Carlsson abandoned politics altogether. The new Prime Minister, Göran Persson, was also a social democrat, but his ideas were far removed from those of Olof Palme and Ingvar Carlsson.